You're listening to episode 17 of the Physical Education Podcast. Today you're going to learn why no amount of remedies and treatments will solve the root cause of your problem until you address the problem at the identity level. Hi, I'm Pierre Morand, and you're about to learn about the hidden and often misunderstood causes of chronic pain. For 15 years, I suffered with chronic pain with no cause or end in sight. I tried everything I could find, but was often left with unanswered questions and conflicting advice. So I decided to take matters into my own hands and to become a physical therapist. I studied everything I could about pain, about the body, and about health. Along the way, I realized that the solutions to my pain and health issues were within me. I didn't need someone to fix me. I needed to reclaim ownership of my body and fix myself. More importantly, I needed to fix myself while honoring and understanding my body's own wisdom and capacity for self-healing. Since then, I've worked on bringing this knowledge to others in pain, combining pain science, psychology, biomechanics, nutrition, and neurology to provide the light bulb moments and self-awareness to take control. Because eventually most people in pain realize they need to understand the bigger picture of what causes chronic pain. The purpose of this podcast is to help you see and navigate that bigger picture so that you can finally reclaim control of your health and overcome pain once and for all. In this episode of the Physical Education Podcast, we're going to be looking at the topic of identity. And this is sort of a continuation of episode 15 where we delved deep into limiting beliefs. So, you've been in pain for a long time. It stops you from doing the things you want to do. It's always on your mind. Either you're in pain or you're worried about when it's going to hit you next. So, all you want to do is to get better. But the question is, do you even believe that that's possible? So I want you to try this mental exercise. I want you to think of all the things you would be doing if you weren't in pain. All the activities you miss and wish to get back to. So think about those. Think about all the things you would be doing if you weren't in pain. And then see how that sits with you. Does the idea of doing those things feel right? Does it feel possible? Does it feel comfortable? It may seem like a great idea, but does it feel like you? You know, is that you doing those things, or is that a different version of you? A different identity? So I want you to consider this for a little while. I've talked a lot about the identity of being in pain. You know, what keeps someone stuck in pain, what keeps them in their old way of life. And I often say that the solution to pain is usually simple. If you ask the right questions and if you don't rush the process, and you know, the answer then is usually fairly obvious and straightforward. You know, there's very rarely stuff that you wouldn't expect, or you know, there's the saying, there's nothing new under the sun. And that's usually the case with pain. You're not going to be surprised by what's causing your pain. But yet, here we are. You know, we can provide all the solutions, but we struggle to act on these. And this isn't unique to pain. You know, it's a universal human challenge. Whether it's weight loss, whether it's giving up smoking, drinking, drugs, whether it's gaining muscle, improving your endurance, or acquiring any kind of skills, it's all the same basic issue. You are an individual stuck in a way of life that has led to certain circumstances and to certain consequences. For example, obesity or addiction or alcoholism and so on. So those are the consequences of the way of life that you are stuck in and living in. And you want to be someone who lives a life free of these things. So this is where you're stuck. On the left, you can visualize that you're stuck here in this life, and where you want to go is this different thing. And the thing is that everyone has the answer to your problem. You know, they'll say, you know, just cut out carbs, or go vegan, or just quit cold turkey, you know, just give up, and, you know, just mind over matter and all that kind of stuff. And you've probably heard this kind of advice a million times, and you've probably offered that to a few people who never asked for advice. But the thing is that we all know that we should be healthier, you know, to some varying extent. You know, it's obvious. Sometimes the information we follow isn't accurate. Sometimes we know we need to be healthy, and what we do isn't actually in our best interest because we're mistaken. But we all know that we need to pursue health, and we get the general point, and we're familiar with the things we should be doing. But we don't do these things. We don't change anything. And often no amount of gung-ho, beast mode, quote, beast mode motivation will actually last long enough to get you to the finish line. So I've been searching, deeper for better answers, because I'm interested in the times when these things don't work. A lot of people will find something that works in certain instances and they'll just go all in on that, and that's their thing. But I'm more interested in, well, why didn't it work in this instance? And why are there tons of people for whom this doesn't work? And again, that's the point I always come back to, is that we have all this information, we have all these resources for people in pain, yet we don't have a proportionate reduction in cases of chronic pain. So clearly we're missing something. There's some aspect of it that we're missing. So it would seem that, based on what I've been studying, that whatever identity you hold at an unconscious level will dictate your outcomes. So if you can't actually envisage yourself as the person you wish to be, no amount of external work will get you there. And this is a huge topic, and there are so many caveats to what I'm saying. So I don't want you to think that this means that you're bound forever to be who you are now, because that's not at all the case. But we need to work at an identity and an unconscious level to make real change, particularly when things aren't working, when you're stuck. Because at the moment, most solutions are external. They are done to you. They're something that's administered to you. In reality, you need to be the kind of person that would not be in this situation to begin with, which sounds a bit odd, and I'll delve into that a bit more. But the most solutions, they're focused on you doing or not doing a specific thing. It's all about taking action. You need to be the person first versus taking action, because and we'll talk about that. It's thinking in reverse. So before we continue, I figure it's worth kind of defining the term identity, because it's not, what I mean by that is your personal identity. And so the definition I'm working from is: personal identity is the concept you develop about yourself that evolves over the course of your life. And this may include aspects of your life that you have no control over, such as where you grew up or the color of your skin, as well as your, the choices you make in life, such as how you spend your time and what you believe. So there are factors that are outside of your control, that are imposed on you, or that are just happenstance. It's just luck. It's just the way it is. And then there are choices, and it's all sort of intertwined. So what is your identity? What qualities do you embody as a person? What is your character? What do people say about you? Are you reliable? Are you committed? Are you self-integral? Are you disciplined? Are you true to your word? Are you confident? And I'm asking you. I'm not saying in general terms. I'm asking you: are you these things, or what are you? And you need to be honest with yourself. What core beliefs do you hold, either about yourself or about others and about the world? Surrounding self-worth. Do you have low self-worth or high self-worth? Do you feel like you are a victim of circumstance? So that's, again, getting back to the element of chance. Your circumstances, your environment that you were born into, and that's unfortunate. But then what do you make of that? Are you a victim of that, or are you empowered by that? And that's what are your beliefs? What is your identity surrounding all that? You can spin it either way. I was born in the worst possible conditions, therefore I'll never make it. Or I was born in the worst possible conditions, therefore I'm resilient enough to make it. It's all, what do you say to yourself, and how do you view the world? And so, who are you? What positive, because there are positive traits, of course, and what negative traits or beliefs are part of your identity? And I really want you to consider that. And there will be more time at the end, a worksheet for you to work through this. But I want you to start thinking about this. And, all of these things will influence all of the macro and micro decisions you make on a daily basis. And the first step is to identify these and notice their influence in your day-to-day life. So if you're still not sure how to figure out your identity, if I'm asking you these questions and you're like, well, I don't know, a simple thing is to just look at where you are now in your life. Are you successful? Are you happy? Are you content? Are you proud? Are you ashamed? Are you satisfied? Are you unsatisfied? Are things going the way you would like them to be going? Your unconscious identity is evident in where you find yourself in life. And you can also think about your bad habits and the things you continue to do in spite of knowing better. And like I said, if you want to go deeper into this, which I would recommend, I've got resources with essentially lists of all of these beliefs and habits and traits that you can basically pick out, and that'll help you get thinking. Now the thing with this is as we're working through this, I also don't want you to do this unless you're generally in a good emotional state, because as you go into this work, you're going to be digging up unpleasant realities. You're confronting your inadequacies, and we all have them to varying degrees, and this can be a tough process, and we can also often be our most harshest critics. So make sure you're feeling up to it. The other thing is to not give these traits any power. So, you might list out these things about you that you tend to do that are, maybe shortcomings, maybe are negatives, maybe are holding you back. I don't want you to give these things any power. Just acknowledge them. They're only stories that you've told yourself long enough to believe. It's just been repeated to you. You've been born into it. You've been living it long enough that it's just automatic, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. It's just what you're working from. It's where your thinking comes from, because of powers outside of your control. But what you can control is changing that, and we'll talk about that towards the end. So once you have a good sense of your current identity, let's look at defining the identity of the person you want to be. So we want to outline two very clear things. Who are you now? What are the positives and the negatives about you as a person? What are the factors about your personality, about your character that keep you stuck? And like I said, you need to be honest with yourself. You need to stop making excuses, but also not be too harsh on yourself. And you need to get a very clear picture of that person that you are now and how you might be keeping yourself stuck. And then we need to define what you need to be and who you need to be in order to get the results. So the question is, who do you want to be? Or if you prefer, how do you want to be? So as an example, you may want to be pain-free. So I'm presuming you want to be pain-free. And so you could ask yourself, what does someone who is pain-free do? Who are they? And what identity do they have? Because we understand that pain boils down to excessive stress of some form or another. It can be mental, it can be emotional, nutritional, chemical, hormonal, mechanical, structural, and so on. We've covered this lots in the past. And it's usually a combination of all of these factors or some of these factors. So someone who is pain-free has managed to sufficiently balance all of these things. And they live their life in a way that keeps enough resources in the health tank. So I talk about your stress and health scales. You want these scales to be tipped towards health. So I'll use myself as an example. When I was the victim of my pain, I went to bed late. I had zero consideration for my health in any meaningful way. I had very little self-integrity. I was a very good person. I'd do anything for someone, but in terms of looking after myself, no real concept of that and no effort, so I was reliable in the sense that someone could rely on me to do something for them, but I couldn't rely on myself to do anything for myself. And that's something I can say comfortably now and easily, but maybe if you're at a certain stage, confronting that is going to be tough. So again, you want to just dip your toes in and enter this process with a bit of compassion for yourself, because no one's perfect. So yeah, as an example, that's where I was, and that was my identity. And yes, unfortunate things that happened to me. I got issues that were just, as far as I can tell, pure chance. And things happened in my life that, they weren't my fault, but I responded to them in a certain way, and I continued to respond to them in a certain way until the pain and the health issues for me got so bad that I was forced to look at myself. I was forced to find a solution. And with that came this significant change in my identity and how I behaved and how I looked at myself and how I treated myself. So, going back to the person who is pain free, like I said, they live a life, they live their life in a way that keeps their health tank full. So stress tank, health tank, on our scales, we want the health tank, your bank account, your stores of energy, your reserves. We want that to be full. We want that to outweigh these stress tanks. So people who live their life in this way are generally committed to their health. This means they have self-integrity and they follow through on their plans. This means that at the identity level, they are the kind of person who sees commitment as part of who they are. They're that kind of person. That's just who they are, and you'll know this from looking at people maybe not even necessarily friends, but maybe friends or people you don't like. People you don't like is probably a good it's probably a good way of going about this, is seeing those traits about them that you dislike, and perhaps pausing for a second and seeing that maybe you have a degree of that in yourself, and maybe your disgust and disdain for that trait of that person is actually a reflection of what's going on internally and what you dislike about yourself. Because ideally, if someone's not doing anything to you directly, and if they're just maybe a bit of a bad person, or they're something you don't like about them, that shouldn't cause you anything. It doesn't affect you. That should just go over your head. But often when people have these knee-jerk reactions, and it has nothing to do with them. It's not that someone's coming at you with some sort of aggression of any kind. It's just you notice something on the street, someone who has nothing to do with you, and you get annoyed by it, and you're like, ugh, look at that. And then maybe that's really just reflecting something in you. It's more of an indication of what's going on internally versus anything to do with them. Because why would they bother you? Why would their behavior, why would the behavior of a random person on the street bother you? So think about that, challenge yourself. So like I said, I use notes for this because I tend to ramble, and I went on a tangent a couple of minutes ago, which is a tangent I actually included in my notes. So I'm going to expand on this. So like I said, back when I was dealing with pain, I think this is a good example. It was when I was in college. I used to have terrible sleep habits. I'd always be going to bed at 1 or 2 in the morning, and then I'd struggle to get up for a 10 a.m. lecture the following morning. And I lived 5 minutes away from college. I couldn't have lived, maybe I could have lived in the lecture hall, but I didn't. I lived 5 minutes away from college, and a 10 a.m. lecture was early. And to me now, that just seems mind-boggling. I'm like, if anything starts at 10 now, I'm like, oh, can't we start earlier? It's dragging out the day. I'm like, so much time has passed and so much opportunity to do things has elapsed. And that's a shift in my identity. I became a different person. Yes, we can talk about the habits involved in that, but it's a change in identity, and if I hadn't changed that, I would still be having sleep issues as well as other health issues that I used to have. And so, like I said, you might think that I just got out of the habit of staying up late, but really, the deeper mechanisms that at work are that I became the kind of person who takes their health seriously. The kind of person who is committed to the goal of getting better. I changed my identity, and now, and we're only talking about that this morning, about how my girlfriend and I were talking about how we just don't really eat like a bad food. I mean, we do a bit, but compared to like years ago, it's a lot less. And it's not that, we're struggling really hard to not eat a bag of chips. It's just, you could say we've evolved as people, and that's just who we are now. And we're very focused on the habits, these steps to undo this detrimental behavior, but the identity change is really what's at work. So like I said, all of this, when I was struggling with my sleep, was when my pain was at its worst, and I was compelled to find a solution because no one was able to help me, and I became, quote, a healthy person. I bought into that way of life, and I bought into that identity. That's when I started studying all of this stuff. I became a physical therapist. I was cycling everywhere. I was a different person. I had a different identity. I identified with different things. And like I said, yes, I changed my habits, but I've sustained those changes in habits by changing my identity. An example I like to use a lot is that of David Goggins. He's really popular at the moment. It's like this motivational figure. He used to be a Navy SEAL, and so he's done all sorts of crazy ultra endurance events, and he came from this really rough background, and he had very little education, a lot of I think physical abuse, certainly mental emotional abuse, just a really, really bad situation. And he was significantly overweight, no prospects in life, and he overcame this to become extremely successful, and someone so disciplined and determined that you would assume that he'd always been this way. You just kind of assume, oh, that's just what he's like, but that's not what he was like. That's what he became. And one thing he complains about frequently is that people dismiss his advice by claiming it won't work for them, that he must have a gift. And his point is that no, there is no gift. He overcame such hardship through his own will and determination. And all of his content is extremely inspiring, and it's extremely motivational. But I think he's missing the real mechanism. I think he's not really promoting. I think he understands it on some level, what's actually happened. But what he's promoting, he's sort of promoting, hard work, just do it, just do it, motivation. But he also says, motivation, it's not going to last. So you need to just do it. And I think, really what the deeper mechanism is this really key thing that he mentions in passing in one podcast, is that he essentially became a different person at some point through all of this hardship, because he had tried to go for jogging, eat healthily, lift weights. He had tried that. We all try that. We all try, on New Year's Day, join the gym. We all try to change our behavior. At one point, he changed his identity. He created a sort of alter ego, and in his own words, he became Goggins. He's no longer David Goggins. He became Goggins, which sounds cool. That sounds cool. He changed his identity, and discipline and self-integrity were part of this new identity. David Goggins, he struggles with all that. Goggins, this is what he's like. This is Goggins. And, again, think about that. Think about someone That's the way they are. That's them. I could talk about one of my friends, one of the best work ethics, selfless, also he's just a great person and works very hard. And also everyone knows that about him. That's him. That's who he is. And there is no doubt, when he achieves things as a result of all that hard work, it's great, but it's also, there's no doubt that was going to happen, because that's who he is. And so you think about that. Think about that maybe in people because it might be easier to see. Who are they, and what do you expect of them? What do you expect of them? That's a good question. What do you expect of yourself? Yeah, some food for thought there. This sort of alter ego, this change in identity. You sometimes see this with celebrities. They create alter egos for specific purposes. And Beyonce, apparently, don't know much about Beyonce, but apparently she has her stage persona, which is, I think, Sasha Fierce. Sounds very cool. And that allows her, according to her, the ability to perform the way she needs to perform. And I can certainly understand that to some level. Like if you're, for example, doing this, talking to a camera, I don't particularly want to do this. But I find a way to kind of step into that role, to be that person, to be the back pain coach versus P.A. Morand, who would rather just sit and observe and not talk. So yeah, what I'd like you to do is define what is the identity of the person you wish to become. Are they committed? Are they disciplined? Are they self-integral? Are they fearless? Are they courageous? Do they have self-respect? Do they treat themselves as someone worthy of kindness and love? Do they deserve it? You know? Do they treat and regard themselves as kindly as they do their loved ones? So, you know, you might have all the kindness and love for your loved ones, but not for yourself. Does that need to change? That probably needs to change. I can't imagine any scenario where it's beneficial to not look after yourself and take care of yourself and regard yourself well. So, do they believe they are worthy and deserving of success? Do you even believe that you are worthy of success? Tough question. Where do you begin? How do you figure that out? You just need to kind of sit with that. And then, do you belong, or does this person you want to become, do they belong in the world that they wish to inhabit? So again, a kind of obvious example, if I'm coming from poverty, never had nice clothes, always looked poor, as well as came from poverty, so maybe in society I was looked down upon, and I want to become this super successful business person, and I want to go on a power lunch and sit in a place and be loud and confident and eat a meal, and I don't know where I'm going with this, but you just want to inhabit that space, like in the Wolf of Wall Street, where they're having their lunch upstairs and everyone's doing coke, and I couldn't really rock, like if I rocked up there, just in my day-to-day clothes, I would probably stand out. And do I feel like I fit in? And so, do you feel like you fit in to the world that you want to inhabit? Because people want all sorts of things. They want to be rich, they want to be successful, which is all great in theory. But do you believe that you can even walk into that world and blend in and just be part of it? Or do you feel like you stick out like a sore thumb, and so on? So hopefully that makes sense. But I want you to ponder these questions and define clearly who you want to be. The person who would not be suffering and struggling anymore. Who that person is, define that. So now, let's talk about reverse engineering the outcomes we want. Let's talk about solutions. So, when people think about the things they want, they tend to think the wrong way. They'll usually say something like, if only I had this, then I could do this, and then I'd be happy. So again, like, classic one is like, maybe you're struggling financially, and like, well, if only I had money, then I'd do that, and then I'd be happy. And you're sort of working the wrong way. You need to be happy regardless of anything, regardless of any external circumstances. Happiness comes from within, which sounds stupid, but I suppose it's true. And yeah, and if you think that sounds stupid, maybe ponder that. Why does that sound stupid to you if it is in fact true, which, as far as I can tell, is true? Happiness is very much an inside job. It's up to you, and we do know that happiness is it's not proportionate to wealth. It's not proportionate. It's not a geographical thing. It's not, developed countries that have more happiness. And of course, that's not to say that money can't help with happiness and living conditions can't help with happiness, because of course they can, but happiness is very much strongly rooted in what's going on internally. So, like I said, people will tend to say, if only I had this, then I could do that, and then I'd be happy. If only I didn't have this pain, then I could go on a hike, and then I'd be happy. I'll talk about that in a bit. That was, where I was operating from. So people in this instance, they work from what we call a have, do, be position. So first you need to have, then you can do, and then you can be happy. And so instead, they should work in reverse. They should work from be, do, and then have. So they should act and be as if they already had what they wanted. So you need the identity of someone who already has what you wish to have. You need to reverse engineer the life that you want. Presumably pain. This is a much bigger topic, but let's keep it in relation to pain. So the formula for this, again, just to kind of outline the parameters and to have it clear in your mind and maybe clear on a piece of paper, is to complete this sentence. Who would I be? How would I feel? And what would I do if I already had fill in the blank? If I already had this money, if I already had overcome pain, or if I already had a pain-free body, if I already had a healthy body, who would I be? How would I feel? And what would I do if I already had? So you fill in the blank, and you have to reverse engineer the outcome. You must be the identity of the outcome you want. And so here's a personal example. Let's get personal. So since I graduated about 4 years ago, it's actually 5 years ago I realized, 5 years ago now that I graduated, I'd been working hard to build my practice, and I'd been studying constantly, doing, quote, all the right things to make my work successful, and I didn't take days off, because I felt I needed to always be making progress in some way, whether it was tweaking my website, making videos, or studying my techniques. I was always thinking, I always need to be learning something new, I always need to be trying, and I kept saying to myself, once I've made it, then I'll take some time off. I was working from have, do, be, and I was running myself into the ground. Because I was never really taking time off, and because I was not taking time off when I was working, I was probably not doing my best kind of work, and I wasn't getting the results. I wasn't getting results proportionate to the amount of work that I was putting in. So that was the indication that clearly something is wrong. And again, hopefully this is the indication for you in pain. You're going to your chiropractor, you're going to this, you're doing a raw vegan diet, whatever it is, and you're putting in so much effort, and your life has changed to resolve this pain, but the results are not proportionate to what you're putting in. So something's wrong. Either you're going down the wrong avenue, or maybe you're doing too much. But obviously I can't answer that specifically for you, but these podcasts will help answer that for you. The point is, we need to change the perspective. We need to more likely look internally for the solution, because the solution is generally internal. So like I said, I was working myself into the ground, and luckily I came across this different way of thinking, which I've been discussing in this podcast, and I began to change the way I approach my work. I began to reverse engineer the life I wanted, and I allowed myself to take time off in the way that I assured myself that I would once I had made it. So rather than saying, once I'll make it, I'll take time off, and I'll, it's very, very sorry, that was like a big stutter. It was very simple stuff, like going for a hike, just taking a day to go on a hike and to go walking, to go out into nature. Very simple stuff. I allowed myself to do that, and to be okay with the fact that I wasn't working, and I wasn't going to catch fire with the fact that I wasn't working, and I could still survive and take a day off work like most people do. So I inverted that. I started to allow myself to have a life separate from work, and to trust in my abilities. And what happened was that my quality of life increased significantly, and my business began to grow more than ever. And here's what didn't change. This is the key thing: my skills. That's a really important thing, is that like the past 2 years, I haven't added many formal tools to my skill set. And the years before that, I was just learning, and working myself into the ground. but now I'm more successful. I get better results. Things are better. I'm happier. But it's not proportionate to my skills. And as physical therapists, we generally tend to think, I just need more skills. I need more ways to kill the pain. So it's this. It can be challenging to realize actually maybe you need to do less. Maybe you need to, and this is I think applicable to a lot of people in pain. And this was a big thing for me. Is that I became so into being healthy, quote, I was running myself into the ground in other ways. I was cycling everywhere. I remember at the height of it, I was between college and work. It was like 6-7 days a week, and I was cycling in and out of either college or work, which was 7 kilometers each way, 14 kilometers a day, 6 to 7 days a week. And I was eating like a low carbohydrate diet. I was being so healthy. I was so good at it. And I ruined my health. It was awful. But I was doing all the right things. I was doing all the doing, but I wasn't being the kind of person I needed to be. And so the changes were internal. I needed to be comfortable in not working. I needed to be okay with the fact that I could take some time off. So hopefully that's beginning to make sense. But yeah, like I said, the change is an identity change, because if maybe you are the kind of person who's always doing, but then you just change what you're doing. You try this method and then you try this method, but maybe you need to be a different person rather than keep going through all the different therapies that are available to you. So basically all of this as it was happening, and then all of the investigation that came from it and the dot connecting I've done have basically radically changed my perspective on life. And so this is why I'm really excited by this sort of approach to behavior change, and this approach to addressing health issues, but really it's addressing life issues. I dislike the idea of limiting myself to pain, but it is very much my skill set. But the point I like to make is that yes, it's pain, but it's all intertwined. It's all part of your life, and you can't disconnect it. If you actually want to resolve it at a root level, you can't disconnect it from all of these other things. You need to acknowledge all of these other things. So yeah, this way of thinking, working from identity, working from being the person first, be, do, have, working from that place has been really transformational. So it's a really important concept to understand, and it can be, I personally found it a bit hard to grasp. I like the sound of it, but then I was like, I don't really, I'm not sure if I even get it. I just like the sound of it. So stick with it. Try the exercises, listen to this. I'll give you some further listening at the end, but really try to absorb this way of thinking. And it's going to pay dividends in all aspects of your life. So the most important thing to understand, back to my notes, the most important thing to understand is that your behaviors now and the way your body acts, it's part of a survival mechanism. Your brain likes familiarity, it likes predictability, and as far as it's concerned, as far as your brain is concerned, your habits, whether good or bad, are necessary to your survival. And so to change this, we need to influence the unconscious and emotional parts of the brain. So our conscious brain is more analytical, it's more logical, it's the part that rationalizes things, and then the unconscious portions of the brain are more emotional and intuitive. So this is where our unconscious survival mechanisms originate. That's where they're housed. And the mechanisms that aren't logical but rather are emotionally driven. So those unconscious mechanisms, they're not logical, they're emotionally driven. And so the challenge is that these things are unconscious, and you can't consciously influence them. So we talk a lot about the unconscious, which is all well and good, but how do you change what isn't? How do you affect what's not conscious? And that's a tough question. And we're going to talk about that now. So we need to change the identity and the beliefs at the unconscious level. And the way we do this, it's really two key mechanisms, two distinct components to this. Is the first is we want to quiet the conscious mind. We want to get rid of that that chatter, that overactivity. When you're going to bed and you're thinking about everything that's going on, you're constantly rationalizing things. We need to be able to quiet that voice. And a really simple way of doing that is what's called 7-11 breathing. It's a breathing technique. Any kind of breathing technique in general is going to help, but one in particular that makes your exhalation longer than your inhalation. So anything that draws out the exhalation. So the 7-11 breathing is quite a simple one. So you inhale to a fast count of 7. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you exhale to a fast count of 11. The numbers don't matter really. The point is that the exhalation is always going to be longer than the inhalation. So it could be 7-11, it could be 5-8, it could be 10-15, whatever it is. And as you slow and deepen your breathing, you induce slower brain waves, and these are what we would call alpha and theta brain waves, and they are states of relaxation and meditation, and they quieten the fast chatter of the conscious mind, and they engage more of the unconscious mind. So that's the first component. We need to get rid of that chatter. We need to get good at mindfulness, at meditation, whatever you want to call it. You need to get good at sitting in silence and simply observing and not overthinking. So that, for some people, that's a tough enough challenge in and of itself, but it is very straightforward, and it starts with a good breathing practice. So the second part is multi-sensory visualization. So once you're in this state of relaxation through the breathing, you begin to visualize the fine details of your desired outcome. So the smells, the sights, the emotions, the sounds and sensations of being the person you wish to be and of living through the outcomes you want. You have to inhabit that. So in the simplest terms, we're minimizing the analytical and rational parts of the brain and allowing the unconscious mind to experience the outcome we want. And the more it gets to experience this, the more believable it becomes, and the more it becomes an effortless part of your identity, because your brain doesn't make a distinction between what is real and what is imagined. So this is why visualization can be so powerful, particularly when we make the conscious, logical brain more quiet, and we make the visualizations really vivid. So it's not just about pictures. You need to bring it to life. You need to feel everything about it. And so again, it could be, if you just want to be pain-free and you want to, I'll use sort of my own examples again, being able to go on a hike and to go out into nature and to just smell the air from the mountain, to put my hands in a cold stream and running water, to swim in the ocean. You basically bring this to life in a really, really vivid way. And things like Pinterest, the app Pinterest is really helpful because you can create a board of the things that you want, the sensations, and you can go through that and bring it all to life in a really visual way, and then you can kind of add on the other aspects of it in your mind. But you essentially want to bring the outcome to life, because right now perhaps the vision of your outcome, who you want to be and who you need to be, it likely feels unattainable. It maybe doesn't feel quite like you, and you'd like it to be you. You'd like that vision to be you, but rationally you can't see how it could possibly happen or how it could be possibly achieved. So bringing that vivid multi-sensory imagery to the unconscious mind brings it to life. It makes it real, it makes it believable, and over time this allows you to act in accordance with the outcomes so that you finally achieve what you wish to achieve. And this is a really important point. This isn't some weird mystical force. I touched on this, like I said, a couple of episodes ago when discussing limiting beliefs. So this isn't like The Secret. This isn't universal forces conspiring to do anything. And to be honest, that's not even to discount that. I don't really know enough about that. But what this is that, essentially your beliefs govern your behaviors. And so you act in accordance with your beliefs. And since most of your behaviors are unconscious and automatic, they unfold and determine your life without you really noticing. So we need the beliefs and the identity to correspond with the desired outcome. So if you're watching this, we want, left hand, right hand, we want them to merge and converge, and we want congruence between the two. They need to match, because otherwise the beliefs that we have will continue to give us the outcomes that we are currently having. If we don't change those beliefs, we're going to continue to produce what we're producing, because most of what we do is unconscious. It just happens automatically. When you wake up in the morning, do you think, well, what am I going to do this morning? You just kind of get up, maybe you brush your teeth, you have your breakfast. It's all kind of a process, and it all just sort of happens. And obviously there are exceptions to this, but so much of what we do and how we react to things and how we interact with people and how we view things is just kind of in there. It's like a template, it's like a filter. And so the outcomes we get are greatly dictated by that. Not solely dictated by that, but greatly dictated by that. So now going back to this exercise, the aim with the exercise is to create, like I said, congruence between what you consciously desire and what you unconsciously believe. So you need to paint a picture of where you are now. You need to paint a picture of who you need to be to get where you want to be. And we need to make those two things match. We need to be who you want to be. We need to be who you need to be to achieve your result, and stop being who we are now and who is keeping us in our current state. And so the way we do this is by performing this exercise, so the breathing with the multisensory visualization. You want to do this for a total of 15 minutes per day for at least 70 days. Apparently that's how long it takes, a bare minimum of 70 days to create any sort of meaningful change. Now it doesn't have to be 15 minutes all at once. You can break it up based on what works for you. I've heard of some people doing 15 1-minute visualizations, which sounds awful to me, but maybe that sounds good to you. I personally do 60 to 90 minutes of visualization / meditation per day, usually split in two, but you obviously don't have to do that much. It's just to kind of illustrate that how much you can do and how beneficial it can be. And this kind of work has become a priority for my own self-care as I continue to unravel the limiting beliefs that I've adopted over my life and after years of being in pain. And I would say if you are interested in personal growth, which you must be if you're listening to this podcast, you're going to want to invest plenty of time towards introspection and self-analysis, and this exercise provides the perfect template for that, especially combined with the exercise in the previous episode called Tuning into Your Body. If you combine this with deep physical introspection, you're going to change a lot about your understanding of yourself. So that's where it starts, and then you behave differently, and then your life changes as a result. So again, it's not some mystical force as far as I can tell. Maybe it is, but there are elements of it that are grounded in just behavior and how your brain works. So you're just changing the way you think, and then you react to the world differently, and so you get different outcomes that are more in line with your desires. So yeah, that's it. You're going to find all the resources and all the specifics for these exercises. I mean, I talked about them there, but if you didn't write anything down, that's fine. All of that information is in the show notes, as well as some further listening, which I would highly recommend, if you'd like to learn more about creating change at the identity level. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Physical Education Podcast. If you're the kind of person who likes to help others, then share this with someone in need. If you found value in the information here, they will too, so please share this in whatever way you can. If you have any questions, you can email me directly at pa@thebackpaincoach.net. I may even use your question for a future podcast episode. If you'd like more information to help you overcome pain, be sure to follow The Back Pain Coach on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube, and to join my newsletter. The major turning points in my own recovery have come from changes in perception and through learning more about myself. I believe that we can help others by sharing information that expands their minds. Finally, I'd greatly appreciate if you could leave a positive review on iTunes or Stitcher so that others may find this information and you can play a positive role in their healing journey. Thanks again for listening.